Dr. Sarah Chen stood at the window of the diplomatic station, watching the twin suns of Kepler 442b paint the sky in shades of orange and gold. The peace talks had been going well. Too well, perhaps. After 30 years of being part of the galactic hegemony, humans still felt like the new kids at school. The other alien races treated them politely but always seemed to look down on them. "Mom, can we go see the Crystal Gardens after your meeting?" Maya asked, tugging at Sarah's sleeve. Her 12-year-old daughter had been excited about this trip for weeks. The diplomatic station was like a small city floating in space with amazing sights that Earth children rarely got to see. Sarah smiled and ruffled Maya's dark hair. "Of course, sweetheart. Just let me finish this last session with the council." The diplomatic hall was massive, built to hold representatives from all 7 of the ancient alien races that ruled the galaxy. Humans were still the newest members, having joined only 3 decades ago. They had been grateful for the invitation. Earth's resources were limited, and the technology the aliens shared had solved many problems. Ambassador Marcus Reed was already at the human table, reviewing his notes. He was a good man, Sarah thought. He had 3 children of his own back on Earth. The other diplomats were arriving too. The tall, blue-skinned Zephyrians with their proud military bearing. The hive-minded Vorthons who moved like they shared one brain. The crystal-like beings called Nixari who communicated through light patterns. At the center of it all sat the Eternal Architect, the leader of the Hegemony Council. Nobody knew how old it was. Some said millions of years. It looked like a living mountain of crystal and metal. Ancient beyond human understanding. The humans have served well. The architect's voice echoed through the hall without it moving what might have been its mouth. Your species shows promise. Your soldiers are brave. Your engineers are skilled. But there is a problem we must address. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. The tone was wrong. This was supposed to be a celebration of human achievements, not a problem-solving session. Your children, the architect continued, are being raised incorrectly. The human delegation exchanged confused looks. "I'm sorry, what do you mean?" Marcus asked. "Human adults are violent and chaotic by nature. This is useful for some purposes. But your offspring show potential for something greater. They could become perfect administrators, perfect servants of order. But only if they are properly educated." Sarah's hand instinctively moved to her communicator, where Maya's signal showed she was safe in the station's recreational area. "Our children are fine as they are," she said carefully. "That is where you are wrong," the architect replied. The lights in the hall suddenly dimmed. Emergency alarms began to sound. Through the windows, Sarah could see ships approaching. Not just any ships. The black and gold vessels of the Void Templars, the Hegemony's elite forces. "What's happening?" Marcus demanded, standing up. "A correction," the architect said simply. The hall's doors burst open. Void Templars in their dark armor poured in, their weapons already drawn. Sarah tried to run toward the exit, thinking only of Maya. But a Templar's energy blast struck Marcus in the chest. He fell instantly, his eyes going dark. "Children between the ages of 5 and 16, the architect announced as if nothing had happened. "They will be collected from all human territories. They will be educated properly. Their minds will be cleaned of human chaos and filled with order." Sarah screamed and tried to run, but strong alien hands grabbed her arms. Through her communicator, she could hear Maya's voice, scared and crying. Mom, there are soldiers here." "They're taking us. Mom, help." Then the communicator went dead. The next hours passed like a nightmare. Sarah and the other surviving humans were forced to watch as reports came in from across human space. Earth, the colonies on Mars and Europa, the research stations in the outer systems, the mining facilities in the asteroid belt. Everywhere humans lived, the Void Templars had struck at the same time. They took only children. Every human child between 5 and 16 years old. Parents who tried to fight were killed without hesitation. Those who cooperated were left alive but empty-handed and broken. 847 children, the architect reported when the collection was complete, from 17 different worlds and stations. They are already being transported to education facilities. "You can't do this," Sarah whispered, her voice hoarse from screaming. "They're just children. They're innocent." "Innocence is inefficiency," the architect replied. "Human children have potential, but human parents ruin that potential with emotions, with chaos, with love. Love makes beings weak and unpredictable. We will remove these flaws. The crystal being's voice became even colder. The children's minds will be wiped clean. New personalities will be installed. Better personalities. They will become perfect administrators for the hegemony. They will be grateful for this gift. Sarah felt something break inside her chest. Not just her heart, but something deeper. Something that had held her together her entire life. You have 72 standard hours to decide, the architect continued. Accept this honor and continue as valued members of the hegemony. Your children will serve a greater purpose than you could ever give them. Or resist and watch your species burn. The architect paused, its crystal surface reflecting the lights of the hall. Choose wisely. The children's minds are already being prepared. Soon they will not remember you at all. This pain you feel will pass. In time you may even thank us. Sarah looked around the hall at the other alien representatives. Some looked uncomfortable, but none spoke up. None objected. They had all agreed to this. They saw human children as resources to be optimized, not as people to be protected. The surviving humans were loaded onto a transport ship back to Earth. Sarah sat in silence, staring out at the stars. Somewhere out there, Maya was being hurt in ways Sarah couldn't even imagine. Her bright, curious, loving daughter was being turned into a machine. Other parents wept openly. Some raged, some sat in shocked silence. But Sarah felt something else growing inside her. Something cold and calculating, something that scared her. She thought about Maya's laugh, about bedtime stories and scraped knees and birthday parties, about the way her daughter's eyes lit up when she learned something new. All of that was being erased right now, replaced with alien ideas about order and efficiency. The hegemony thought they understood humans. They had studied human soldiers and seen violence. They had studied human engineers and seen creativity. But they had never studied human parents whose children were threatened. They had no idea what they had just awakened. As Earth grew larger in the view screen, Sarah made a decision. The hegemony had given humanity 72 hours to choose between submission and extinction. They thought those were the only options. They were wrong. Sarah began to smile, and the other humans in the transport ship felt afraid when they saw that smile. It was not the expression of a grieving mother. It was the expression of something that had moved beyond grief into a place where normal human emotions could not follow. The hegemony wanted to see what humans were really capable of when they stopped being civilized. They were about to find out. The emergency session of the Terran Council had been called within hours of the transport ship reaching Earth. The great chamber beneath Geneva was filled with the most powerful humans in the galaxy. Presidents, generals, scientists, and corporate leaders. All of them had one thing in common now. They were parents whose children had been stolen. President Elena Vasquez stood at the podium, her face pale but determined. Her own son had been taken from the academy on Luna. The situation is clear, she said, her voice echoing through the chamber. The hegemony has committed an act of war against humanity. They have taken our children. General Thomas Stone stepped forward. He was a large man with scars from the border wars, but today he looked smaller somehow. Defeated. Ma'am, I have to report the military situation. It's not good. The chamber fell silent. The hegemony has 7,000 years of technological advancement on us. Their fleets outnumber ours 100 to 1. Their weapons can destroy planets. Their shields can stop anything we have. Stone's voice was heavy. In a straight fight, we lose. Not just lose, and we get wiped out completely. Angry voices rose from the assembly. Demands for action. Calls for immediate attack. But Stone raised his hand for silence. That's not the worst part, he continued. Even if we somehow won, even if we destroyed every hegemony ship and conquered every alien world, it wouldn't matter. By the time we did that, our children would be gone. Their minds erased and rebuilt. They wouldn't be our children anymore. The chamber erupted in shouting. Some called for suicide attacks. Others demanded negotiations. A few suggested surrender. In the chaos, nobody noticed Dr. Sarah Chen walking calmly to the speaking platform. Quiet, she said in a normal voice. The chamber fell silent instantly. There was something in her tone that made everyone stop and listen. Sarah looked around the room at the faces of desperate parents and leaders. These were good people, civilized people, people who followed rules and tried to do the right thing. They have made a mistake, Sarah said simply. The hegemony thinks they understand us. They have watched our soldiers fight and seen violence. They have studied our diplomats and seen compromise. They believe they know what humans are capable of. She paused, and in that pause something seemed to shift in the room. But they have never seen what happens when you threaten our children. They think civilization makes us weak. They think following rules makes us predictable. They are about to learn the difference between choosing to be civilized and being unable to be anything else. Dr. Chen walked to the center of the chamber. I propose we show them what humans really are when we stop pretending to be nice. President Vasquez leaned forward. What are you suggesting, Dr. Chen? I'm suggesting we become monsters, Sarah said calmly. Controlled, intelligent, purposeful monsters. We cannot beat them with better ships or bigger guns, but we can beat them by becoming something they have never encountered before, something that scares them more than death. The chamber was completely silent now. For 30 years we have been good citizens of the galaxy, Sarah continued. We have followed their laws. We have honored their customs. We have kept our worst impulses in check because we wanted to be worthy of their respect. Her voice grew colder. They have shown us that respect means nothing. Honor means nothing. Following rules means nothing. The only thing that matters is power, and the will to use it without limits. General Stone spoke up. Dr. Chen, what exactly are you proposing? Sarah turned to face him. I am proposing we remember what we were before we joined the hegemony. Humans spent thousands of years perfecting the art of war. We created weapons so terrible that we banned them. We developed tactics so brutal that we agreed never to use them again. We built institutions whose only purpose was to make sure we never again became the monsters we were capable of being. She smiled, and several people in the chamber shivered. The hegemony thinks those institutions make us weak. They think our moral codes are limitations. They're about to discover that civilization isn't weakness, it's restraint, and restraint can be removed. President Vasquez stood up slowly. You're talking about abandoning everything we've built, everything we've become. The Geneva Conventions, the Luna Accords, the Treaty of Mars, all the laws that govern how civilized beings conduct war. Yes, Sarah said simply, all of it. Every rule, every limit, every moral boundary. We throw it all away and become what we were before we learned better. The chamber erupted again, but this time the voices were different, darker. People were beginning to understand what Sarah was suggesting. Dr. Amira Hassan, head of the Biological Research Division, stood up. The weapons we banned, the techniques we outlawed, some of them were locked away for good reasons. They weren't just terrible, they were uncontrollable. Once released, they couldn't be stopped. Good, Sarah replied. Let them be uncontrollable. Let them be unstoppable. Let them be everything we swore we would never use again. She turned to address the entire chamber. The hegemony has taken our children. They plan to erase their minds and rebuild them as servants. They think this will make us submit because they think we love our children more than we hate our enemies. Her voice rose. They're right about the first part. We do love our children more than anything. But they're wrong about what that means. It doesn't mean we'll submit. It means we'll do anything to get them back. President Vasquez called for order, but it was too late. The chamber had transformed. The careful, civilized discussion had become something else. Something hungrier. All in favor of Operation Reversion, Vasquez called out. Every hand in the chamber rose. Within hours, the orders went out. To every human colony, every research station, every military base, every corporate facility. The message was simple. The children have been taken. All limits are removed. Show them what we really are. In laboratories that had been sealed for decades, scientists began opening containers marked with warnings in dozens of languages. In military archives, generals pulled out files labeled "Never Again" and "For Emergency Use Only." In corporate boardrooms, executives authorized projects that had been considered too dangerous, too immoral, too terrifying to ever implement. Dr. Hassan stood in her lab, looking at a vial of something that glowed faintly blue. The label read, Nanovirus Prototype 7 Neural Targeting System banned by treaty. She had helped design it 20 years ago, then spent every day since hoping it would never be used. I'm sorry, she whispered to the empty air, to the aliens who would soon experience what was in that vial, to the universe itself, for what humanity was about to become. Then she loaded the vial into a delivery system and began making copies. Across human space, similar scenes played out. The restraints were coming off. The monsters were waking up, and somewhere in the darkness between stars, human children cried for parents who were about to do terrible things to get them back. The first attack came not from human warships, but from within the hegemony itself. Dr. James Morrison had lived on the Vorthan homeworld for 15 years. He was a respected xenobiologist, studying the fascinating way Vorthan minds connected to each other in their hive network. His neighbors liked him. His research was important. His Vorthan colleagues considered him a friend. None of them knew that James had spent those 15 years learning exactly how to destroy them. When the signal came from Earth, the children have been taken. All limits are removed. James activated devices he had hidden throughout the planet's major cities. The Vorthan's hive mind was their greatest strength, allowing millions of individuals to share thoughts and experiences instantly. James turned it into their greatest weakness. The nanobots he released were designed specifically for Vorthan neural tissue. They didn't kill. Death would have been merciful. Instead, they amplified pain signals and made them spread through the hive network. When one Vorthan suffered, they all suffered. When one died, they all experienced the death. Within hours, the entire planet was writhing in agony. Every Vorthan felt every injury, every moment of terror, every death, multiplied by millions. James watched from his laboratory as beings he had called friends collapsed in the streets, their minds unable to process the overwhelming cascade of shared suffering. He recorded everything. The data would be useful for refining the technique for use on other hive mind species. On the Nexari worlds, Dr. Lisa Park was conducting her own experiment. The Nexari communicated through quantum-entangled light patterns, their thoughts traveling instantaneously across space. Lisa had spent 12 years studying their beautiful, crystal-like bodies and their fascinating quantum consciousness. She had also spent those 12 years learning how to hack into their quantum network. The virus she introduced was elegant in its simplicity. It trapped Nexari minds in recursive thought loops, forcing them to relive their worst memories over and over again. But because their quantum consciousness existed across multiple dimensions, they couldn't simply die to escape the torment. They were trapped in eternal, multidimensional nightmares. Lisa's research notes from that day were later found by human historians. The final entry read, "The quantum virus is working perfectly. I can hear them screaming in dimensions we don't even have names for." Maya would have loved to see this. She was always interested in physics. I hope she's still alive when I get her back. The pattern repeated across dozens of worlds. Human researchers, diplomats, traders, and settlers who had lived peacefully among aliens for years suddenly revealed their true purpose. They had been studying, learning, preparing for a war that nobody expected to fight. But the real horror began when the mercy ships arrived. Captain Jessica Rodriguez commanded the medical vessel Florence Nightingale. Her ship was one of humanity's most advanced hospital ships, equipped with the latest medical technology and staffed by the best doctors in human space. When she received the distress calls from plague-stricken alien worlds, she responded immediately. The Vorthan refugees who survived the neural virus outbreak were brought aboard Rodriguez's ship. They received excellent medical care. Their pain was treated with sophisticated drugs. Their injuries were healed with advanced human medicine. Many of them wept with gratitude as human doctors worked around the clock to save their lives. None of them noticed the microscopic machines being injected along with their medicine. "Thank you," gasped a young Vorthan as Jessica visited the medical bay. "We thought, after what happened to our world, we thought you would hate us." Jessica smiled and patted the alien's hand gently. "We don't hate you," she said truthfully. "This isn't about hate. This is about getting our children back." The Vorthan looked confused. "I don't understand." "You will," Jessica said, still smiling. "In about 6 months, those nanobots I just gave you will activate. They'll turn your bodily fluids into acid. It will be extremely painful, and it will take several days for you to die. But don't worry. We'll make sure you survive long enough to infect everyone you care about." The Vorthan's eyes widened in horror. "The wonderful thing about your hive mind," Jessica continued in the same gentle tone, "is that when it happens, you'll all feel it together. Every death, every moment of agony, shared equally among your entire species." She stood up and smoothed down her medical uniform. "Of course, we'll have the antidote ready by then. All you'll have to do is ask nicely and we'll cure everyone. We might even mean it." The pattern of mercy followed by delayed horror spread across the galaxy. Human aid ships arrived at disaster sites with genuine relief supplies and real medical help. They saved millions of lives. They prevented countless deaths. They earned the gratitude of desperate alien populations, and they seeded those populations with dozens of different time-delayed weapons. The psychological impact was devastating. How do you fight an enemy that saves your life while simultaneously destroying you? How do you hate beings who heal your children while planning to kill your entire species? Admiral Thorne of the Zephyrian fleet tried to understand it during an emergency war council. They're not acting like any military force we've ever encountered, he reported to his commanders. Half their ships are bringing humanitarian aid. The other half are conducting what can only be described as scientific terrorism. What do you mean? Asked his second-in-command. They're not trying to conquer territory or destroy our fleets, Thorne explained. They're conducting experiments. Each attack is different, targeting specific biological or psychological weaknesses. It's like they're testing how many different ways they can break us. The truth was even worse than Admiral Thorne suspected. Humanity wasn't conducting random experiments. They were preparing for something much larger. Dr. Sarah Chen stood in the command center on Earth, watching reports flow in from across the galaxy. Each successful test brought them closer to their ultimate goal. Each new weapon was another tool they could use when the time came. The Hegemony Council is demanding a meeting, reported an aide. They want to negotiate. Sarah smiled the same cold smile that had frightened her fellow humans weeks ago. Tell them we'll be happy to meet. In fact, tell them we'll come to them. Ma'am, it's time for the next phase, Sarah said. We've shown them what we can do to their populations. Now we show them what we can do to their leaders. She turned to address the room full of military officers and scientists. Prepare the Earth fleet. Not the warships, the other ships. The ones we've been building in secret. General Stone looked puzzled. Ma'am, what other ships? Sarah's smile grew wider. The ones crewed by volunteers who aren't entirely human anymore. The ones that can survive in conditions that would kill normal people. The ones that don't feel pain or fear because we removed those parts of their brains. The room fell silent. The hegemony wanted to see what humans are capable of when we stop being civilized, Sarah continued. But they still think we're limited by our biology. They're about to discover what happens when we remove those limitations too. In hidden shipyards throughout the solar system, vessels began powering up. Ships crewed by beings that had once been human, but had volunteered to become something else. Something that could survive in the vacuum of space. Something that experienced agony as pleasure. Something that considered death to be just another interesting sensation. The monsters humanity had unleashed on alien populations were nothing compared to the monsters they had made of themselves, and at the center of it all, Dr. Sarah Chen prepared to take the war directly to the beings who had stolen her daughter. The Eternal Architect sat in its command chamber aboard the massive flagship Cosmic Dominion, trying to understand what had gone wrong. For 7,000 years it had ruled the galaxy with perfect order. Species submitted or were destroyed. It was simple. It was efficient. It worked, but humans were different. Report, the architect commanded, its crystal voice echoing through the chamber. Admiral Kethvar, a tall Zephyrian warrior, stepped forward. His proud military bearing was gone, replaced by something the architect had never seen in its long existence: fear. 37 worlds have fallen to human attacks, Kethvar reported. But fallen isn't the right word. They're still there. The populations are still alive, but they're broken. Explain. The humans aren't conquering in any way we understand. They're conducting some kind of galaxy-wide psychological experiment. Every attack is different. Every weapon targets specific weaknesses we didn't even know we had. The architect processed this information. And our response? That's the problem, Eternal One. We can't respond effectively because we can't understand their strategy. They save as many lives as they destroy. They provide medical aid while conducting biological warfare. Our own people don't know whether to fight them or thank them. Another officer stepped forward, Commander Zexhai of the Nexari. Her crystalline form flickered with distressed light patterns. It's worse than that. They're not trying to rule us. They're trying to teach us something. Teach us what? Fear, Zexhai replied simply. They want us to understand what it feels like to have everything we care about threatened. Every attack is designed to make us feel helpless, the way they felt when we took their children. The architect considered this. In its millions of years of existence, it had never encountered a species that conducted war for educational purposes. Where are their fleets? Their invasion forces? That's just it, Admiral Kethvar said. They barely have any military presence at all. Most of their attacks are being carried out by civilians, scientists, doctors, traders, beings we welcomed into our societies years ago. And now they're revealing what they really were. Every human we trusted, every friendship we thought we had, every act of cooperation over the past 30 years, it was all preparation for this moment. The architect felt something it had never experienced before. Something that might have been uncertainty. Bring me the human prisoners. Dr. Sarah Chen was brought into the command chamber in restraints that could hold a mountain, but she walked with the calm confidence of someone visiting a friend's house. Her escort of Void Templars seemed more nervous than she did. Dr. Chen, the architect said, you will call off these attacks immediately. Sarah looked around the chamber with interest as if she were on a tourist visit. This is a beautiful ship. Very impressive. Maya would have loved to see this. She's always been interested in alien technology. Your daughter is being properly educated. Her mind will soon be free of human chaos and filled with order. Sarah nodded thoughtfully. Yes, you mentioned that. Tell me, how is that process going? The architect paused. The human children are resistant to standard neural conditioning. Their minds are more complex than expected. Of course they are, Sarah said with a smile that made the Void Templars step back. Human children are remarkable. They're creative, adaptable, resilient. That's what makes them wonderful. It's also what makes them impossible to brainwash. We will succeed. No, you won't. And that's the first lesson we're teaching you. You took our children because you thought it would make us weak. You thought love was a weakness. You were wrong. Sarah's restraint suddenly fell away. The Templars raised their weapons, but she made no aggressive moves. How did you, the architect began. Nanobots, Sarah explained casually. I've been releasing them since I walked in here. They're spreading through your ship's systems right now. Don't worry. They won't cause any permanent damage yet. Alarms began sounding throughout the ship. The lights flickered. The architect's crystal form pulsed with angry energy. This is impossible. Our security systems are impenetrable. By conventional weapons, yes. But we stopped using conventional weapons the moment you took our children. We've spent the last 6 months developing new forms of warfare specifically designed to hurt you. Sarah walked closer to the architect's massive form. You see, you made another mistake. You thought you knew what humans were capable of because you studied our military, but you never studied what humans do when someone threatens their families. The ship shuddered. Through the viewports, other vessels in the hegemony fleet were experiencing similar system failures. You have one ship, the architect said. We have thousands. Oh, we brought more than one ship, Sarah replied. But they're not the kind of ships you're used to fighting. The main view screen activated, showing space around the fleet. What the architect saw defied understanding. Human vessels were materializing out of what appeared to be empty space. But these weren't normal ships. They moved in ways that violated the laws of physics and their crews. Those aren't human, Admiral Kethvar whispered. Not anymore, Sarah agreed. We needed crew members who could survive in conditions that would kill normal people. So we made volunteers into something else, something that doesn't feel pain the way humans do, something that considers death to be just another interesting experience. The modified humans could be seen through the transparent sections of their ships. They moved with inhuman grace, working calmly even as their vessels twisted through dimensions that shouldn't exist. We removed their fear, Sarah continued. We altered their pain receptors. We enhanced their neural capacity and removed their need for things like air or food. They volunteered for this, by the way. Parents who wanted to help get their children back. The architect's form pulsed with energy. You're monsters. Yes, Sarah said simply. We are. And we chose to become monsters because you taught us that being civilized wasn't enough to protect what we love. The flagship shuddered again as the nanobots continued their work. Systems throughout the ship were failing in carefully orchestrated patterns. But here's the really interesting part, Sarah continued. Everything we've done so far, all the attacks, all the weapons, all the terror we've inflicted, that was just the demonstration. We wanted you to understand what we're capable of before we begin the real war. Real war? Sarah's smile became something that would haunt the architect's dreams for whatever remained of its existence. You still have our children? Until they're returned unharmed and unchanged, everything you value will be systematically destroyed. Not quickly, that would be mercy. Slowly, carefully. We'll dismantle your civilization piece by piece until you remember what fear feels like. The ship's main computer began speaking in a human voice. Neural virus deployment complete. Quantum consciousness disruptor activated. Dimensional anchor system engaged. Reality distortion field stabilizing. The architect tried to access its ship's systems and found them completely under human control. Worse, it could feel something invading its own consciousness. A presence that shouldn't be able to exist in its crystalline mind. "What are you doing to me?" "Teaching you," Sarah replied. "You wanted to educate our children about order and efficiency. Now we're going to educate you about chaos and love. You're going to experience every emotion you've tried to eliminate, every fear you've tried to control, every pain you've tried to avoid." The architect's consciousness began fragmenting as the human virus took hold. It experienced terror for the first time in millions of years. It felt helplessness. It understood, finally, what it had done to human parents when it took their children. "This is impossible," it managed to say. "We are eternal. We have ruled for 7,000 years, Sarah finished. "And in all that time, you never encountered a species willing to abandon everything good about themselves for the sake of love. You're about to learn what that looks like." Through the viewports, the architect could see its mighty fleet being systematically disabled by ships that shouldn't exist, crewed by beings that had voluntarily surrendered their humanity for the chance to rescue their children. "Return our children," Sarah said quietly. "Return them unharmed and unchanged, and we'll go back to being the civilized species you thought you knew." "Refuse, and we'll show you what true chaos looks like," the architect tried to respond. But the human virus was rewriting its consciousness, forcing it to experience emotions it had never felt and fears it had never imagined. Somewhere in the depths of space, human children waited to be rescued by parents who had become something beyond human to save them. 6 months after the first human child was taken, Dr. Sarah Chen stood in what had once been the Hegemony Council chambers. The Great Hall was different now. The ancient symbols of alien authority had been replaced with something simpler. Chairs arranged in a circle, where the representatives of 7 alien species sat and waited for her to speak. They were not prisoners exactly. They were students. Maya Chen walked beside her mother, but she was not the same 12-year-old girl who had been taken from the diplomatic station. The hegemony's neural conditioning had failed, but it had left marks. Maya now carried the memories and knowledge of beings who had lived for thousands of years. Her eyes held wisdom that no human child should possess. "Welcome to your final lesson," Sarah said to the assembled alien representatives. The survivors of the 7 ancient races looked back at her with expressions ranging from fear to resignation to something that might have been gratitude. The proud Zephyrian military leaders now understood what helplessness felt like. The hive-minded Vortons had learned to experience individual suffering. The crystalline Nixari had discovered emotions they had never possessed. "You wanted to teach our children about order," Sarah continued. "You believed that chaos was a flaw that needed to be corrected. You thought that love made beings weak and unpredictable." She gestured to Maya, who stepped forward. When the 13-year-old spoke, her voice carried harmonics that seemed to resonate in dimensions beyond normal space. "You were right about one thing," Maya said. "Love does make beings unpredictable. It makes them capable of choices that pure logic cannot understand. It makes them willing to sacrifice everything for something that has no measurable value." The alien representatives shifted uncomfortably. They had all learned over the past months what human love was capable of creating. "You have seen what we became when you threatened our children," Sarah said. "You have experienced weapons designed not just to kill but to teach. You have felt fear for the first time in your civilized lives. You understand now that there are fates worse than death." She walked around the circle of aliens, looking at each one in turn. "But you still don't understand the most important lesson." "What lesson?" asked Admiral Kethvar, the Zephyrian warrior who had once commanded fleets. His voice was barely a whisper. "That we did all of this because we love you too." The chamber fell silent. The alien representatives looked at her with confusion and disbelief. Sarah smiled, and for the first time in months it was a genuinely warm expression. "Did you think we enjoyed becoming monsters? Did you think we wanted to abandon everything good about ourselves? Did you think we chose to transform our children into beings who carry the weight of ancient knowledge? She gestured to the windows where Earth could be seen in the distance. We did it because you are part of our galaxy now. Your children, your families, your future, they matter to us. And we couldn't let you continue down a path that would destroy everything beautiful about the universe. Maya stepped forward again. The hegemony ruled through fear disguised as order. You took children from their families and called it education. You eliminated emotions and called it efficiency. You were creating a galaxy without love, without chaos, without growth. Her young voice carried the authority of ages. We had to stop you. Not because we hated you, but because we loved what you could become. Commander Zexhai of the Nixari flickered with confused light patterns. You destroyed our worlds. You tortured our populations. You turned our greatest strengths into weaknesses. Yes, Sarah said simply. And then we healed your worlds. We cured your populations. We showed you how to turn your weaknesses back into strengths. Everything we broke, we also fixed. Everything we destroyed, we rebuilt. The truth of it was undeniable. After each terrifying demonstration of human capability, human medical ships had arrived with cures and treatments. Human engineers had repaired damaged infrastructure. Human teachers had helped alien populations rebuild their shattered societies. But they had rebuilt them differently, without the rigid hierarchies that had defined the hegemony, without the cold efficiency that had replaced compassion, with room for chaos, for growth, for love. You taught us that love was weakness, Sarah continued. We taught you that love is strength. You showed us order without mercy. We showed you chaos with purpose. You took our children to make them like you. We saved your children by making you like us. The eternal architect, its crystalline form now flickering with new patterns of light and emotion, spoke for the first time in months. What happens now? Sarah looked at the being that had once ruled the galaxy with absolute authority. The neural virus had not destroyed its consciousness, but had added new dimensions to it. The architect now understood fear, joy, love, loss, all the emotions it had spent eons trying to eliminate from the universe. Now you choose, Sarah said. You can try to rebuild the old hegemony. Try to return to the way things were. Try to eliminate the chaos and emotion we've introduced to your societies. She paused, letting the weight of that choice settle over the chamber. Or you can learn to live with love. Learn to accept that chaos and order can coexist. Learn to rule not through fear, but through the same force that made us capable of becoming monsters to protect our children. Maya walked to the center of the circle, her young face somehow ancient and timeless. The children you took from us were returned 6 months ago. Their minds were unchanged, their spirits unbroken. They are home with their families, safe and loved. She looked around at the alien representatives, but we could have stopped there. We could have taken our children and left you to your ordered, emotionless galaxy. We didn't. Why? Asked the architect. Because, Maya said with a smile that was purely human despite the alien knowledge in her eyes. You're our children too now. All of you. And we protect our children. Sarah stepped forward to stand beside her daughter. The galaxy is yours to govern, but you will govern it with love instead of fear. You will allow chaos to exist alongside order. You will protect children instead of stealing them. You will choose compassion over efficiency. She looked around the chamber one final time, and if you ever forget these lessons, if you ever return to the old ways, if you ever again threaten what we love. Her smile returned, carrying just a hint of the monster she had become. You know what we're capable of. The alien representatives nodded silently. They had learned. They understood. The universe is vast, Sarah said as she and Maya prepared to leave. There is room in it for order and chaos, for logic and emotion, for efficiency and love. You spent 7,000 years trying to eliminate half of existence. We spent 6 months teaching you that both halves are necessary. As they walked toward the exit, Maya turned back to the assembled aliens. Oh, and one more thing. If you need us, if you're ever threatened by something you can't handle, if you need someone to become monsters for the sake of love, she grinned, and in that grin was both the innocence of a human child and the terrible wisdom of beings who had transcended their own humanity. Call us. We're family now. The chamber doors closed behind them, leaving the representatives of 7 ancient civilizations alone with their thoughts and their fears and their newfound understanding of what love could create. Outside, Earth continued its orbit around the sun, home to a species that had learned the most important lesson of all. Sometimes the greatest act of love is being willing to become something terrible to protect something beautiful. And in the depths of space, in the space between stars where the darkest human ship still patrolled, modified beings who had once been human parents continued their eternal watch. They had given up their humanity to save their children. They had gained something else instead. Something that the galaxy was still learning to understand. Something that made sure love would always triumph over fear, no matter what the cost.